so I have 5 elements in my array. I've dropped strings, values into these smaller boxes. I have this big box that has smaller boxes. You can think of a row of smaller boxes, right, inside the big box. And the first box, the first smaller box, has an index number of 0, and then the next one is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we have 5 smaller boxes, if you will, 5 elements in our array, and they're all strings, right? I've declared it to be a string. You can only put strings in there, just like with one variable, a single variable. We've declared its type, its data type. You can only put that type of data in there, like the box that said food only, no dirty socks or anything like that. So you can only put a string into these smaller boxes, right? Okay, let's create another array, and this time it's going to be an array of ints, right? Integers. And we'll do this a little differently. I'm going to first declare the big box, if you will. And then I'm going to create a new instance of this, right? Okay, so in this heights, this is a variable. It's just a variable. It's just a variable that holds an array, right? It holds this array basically. So you can think of it as a big box that contains smaller boxes, right? So this is our variable heights, and we've declared it to be an int array, not just an int, right? But an int array. That's what these square brackets do. The square brackets say this is going to be an array. This is going to be a group of variables, a box of boxes, not just one. This is going to be a group of boxes, right? Or group of variables. And here I've done the same thing. Basically here, I've just split it up into 2 lines. So here I just declare the variable, right? I'm doing the declaration, and here I'm doing the actual assigning. I'm assigning this new keyword. Says create an instance, right? It says create an instance, create whatever this is. Create. Give me one of these. Create one of these, and then the equal sign says assign it to this variable, right? Okay, so I've added values to this array. I have an array of 5 elements. Alright, so I can stick 5 elements in there. Let's see what happens if I try to put another one in here. So I've got 5 so far. So let's try to put a 6th element. Okay, so I've just added a 6th element, right? Just change the value there. So now I have 6 elements. I've declared it as to only hold 5. So I got 5 smaller boxes within this big box, if you will. And all 5 of those small boxes they've got something in it. So I've tried to add another box, if you will. I've tried to add a value to the 6th spot, right? And let's see what happens. Here we got. I'm going to go ahead and run it and set a breaking point, right? So set a breaking point. I'm going to set it right here. So just click over here, or you can do F9. Just click F9 and set the breaking point. So let's go ahead and run this. And we've got to click the button for the code to execute. So let's bring this down a little bit. Okay, so you can see here that we have this variable heights. This variable's already been declared. It doesn't have anything in it. It's just an empty box right now. That's what that null means basically. You could think of it as an empty box. Be the easiest way to think of that. Later I'll give you a more technical definition of null, but just think of null as an empty box, right? So we have this empty box. We've declared this variable, which holds an array. It's declared to hold an array. You can only put an array of ints in there, not just one int. It has to be an array of ints, right? An array of ints. So here this says create the array, right? Create the actual array. Create the box with 5 smaller boxes, if you will. So create the instance. The new keyword says create an instance of an array. Create this thing, this array, with 5 elements. You only have 5 elements, right? So let's keep stepping. Okay, so now we have the array ints, and you see the square brackets. Note the square brackets. Got a 5 in there. And let's open this up. Let's click on this plus sign, and note this has 5 spots, right? And let's grab the rectangle. So we have 5 spots. They're all empty right now. At this point, we haven't put anything in them yet. It hasn't executed the code that will assign values to these spots. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 through 4, right? And the index starts at 0, right? So the first element is the 0th index, right? So let's keep stepping. Scroll down a little bit, okay. Okay, so now I'm on this line. It has not executed this line yet, right? So take a look back in the locals. You'll see that all 5 of these spots are filled up, right? And they all take an int, by the way. The type, each one of these spots takes an int, right? Now the variable heights, this has a value of an array of ints, right? See the type. The type is an array of int. That's the type. The type is an array of int. That's what the square brackets indicate, that it's an array, right? It's an array. It's not just one box, right? It's a group of boxes, right? So, and we have 5 slots, right? 0 through 4. The index starts at 0. So we have 5 slots. And here I'm trying to add a 6th one. I'm trying to add a 6th spot here. So let's see what happens when this code executes. Go ahead and step over. And it's locked up, and it says index out of range exception. Index out of range exception, right? So, why is it giving me this exception? And it's because there's only 5 elements in there. I've declared it to take only 5 elements. So I only got 5 smaller boxes, and I'm trying to add a 6th value, right? So there's not enough smaller boxes. There's not enough spots, right, for this 6th item. Okay, so I've set up another array here. This is an array of strings, right? So it's an array of strings. You only put strings. These are a group of smaller boxes, if you will, a group of boxes, a group of arrays, and each one of those you can only put a string in there, right? Again, the square brackets this is an array, and it's not just one. It's just an array. We can only put 5 elements, and we can make this number anything we want. Just however many we need, right? And the new keyword says create a new instance of whatever this is, right? Create a new instance. We're going to see this new keyword a lot, especially when we get into object-oriented programming and the .NET data types. So you're going to see this quite a bit, right? The new just says create a new of whatever, right? Whatever this is, create me a new one, right? And so here I've assigned values to each one of these slots, each one of these little boxes. I've dropped a string in each one of those boxes. There are only 5, right? So I can only have 5 boxes to work with, right? So we're gonna play around with this list in a couple of minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and show you this one. Here I'm doing something a little bit differently. This is called collection initializer. That's the big fancy term for this. Collection initializer. So this is just a quick way. Note the curly brackets or curly braces, however you want to say it. The curly braces, brackets. This is just a simpler way of populating the array, right? It's just a simpler syntax. You don't have to do this. You can always use this syntax. This is fine. But this is just a simpler way, a quicker way to populate your array, right? And note we don't need the new keyword here. The new keyword is not necessary here, right? So this is basically a shortcut. This is a shortcut for this. And let's look at Go ahead and comment and uncomment this. So we look at this, and here we have the same thing, right? This is the same thing as this. These two, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way, using the object, or not object, but collection initializer. Collection initializer. That's what these curly brackets do. By the way, I'm getting the red squiggly line because I already have a variable by the same name. So there's a conflict there. Say, hey, wait a minute, you've already got a variable by that name. We can't do that. We have no idea. We don't know which is which, right? So you can't have two variables with the exact same name. So that's why it's tripping here. But basically, I just want to show you this collection initializer. You don't have to use it. It's just I've condensed these 6 lines to 1, right? So just a way of condensing your code if you want to. And by the way, you can also do it like this. You can just hit enter here and bring them down like this. You can line them up any way you want. And a lot of people do this. I've seen this a lot in code, especially if you have a lot of values. So, and you could, of course, you can line it up, make it look neater if you like. So this is just one way of doing the same thing, right? This is, with some things, there are multiple ways to do the exact same thing, and some of it's just a matter of preference, right? But this is perfectly fine if you prefer to do it this way. This is just, again, it's a shortcut. It's called collection initializer, and use the curly brackets, curly braces, whatever, to do that. And note that you're separating each value with a comma. Separating each value with a comma, and you'll see this a lot. You're separating each item with that comma, right? The comma is going to separate each item, right? And the last item, you actually could put a comma. That's okay. That's acceptable, and that comes in handy if you're continuing to add to this, and then you don't have to go back and add the comma. And so you don't need a comma here, but it's, if you got one there, it's okay. Okay, let's go ahead and comment this back out. Okay, actually, let's uncomment this, and let's comment this one out, and we'll just use this one, right? So we'll use this way. You can do it either way, but we use this way just to show you the collection initializer. So we've got this. I named it store array, right? Pretty descriptive, right? And we want to use descriptive variable names. It'd be as descriptive as you can, right? Always be as descriptive as you can when you're naming your variables. So this variable holds this array, this group of variables, box of boxes, if you will. They can only hold strings, right? So let's do something with this. We've got these labels, right, on our form. We got 5 of them, and the names are, I just stuck with the default names. Like you click on label 1 and go to property, and you see label 1 is the name, and label 2, label 3, etc. So I'm going to hit F7, go to the code. So we're going to assign whatever's in this spot, right? So the store array, this is the name of the array, right? This is the name of our array, and then we use these index numbers, the index numbers, to tell it which element we want. The 0th will correspond to this element, right? So the 0 corresponds to honey bun in this case. 1 is going to correspond to the second element, right? And 2 with sausage, and you get where I'm going here. 3 with cookies, and 4 with chips, right? So this is the 0th element is the first item, right? The first element. But it's in the 0th index position, and this is going to get confusing at first, because you would think that the first element would be 1, but it's actually 0. And so this just takes some time to get used to that. So let's go ahead and run this. We're assigning each element to one of these labels. This is label 1, label 2, label 3. So I've got those 5 labels. The text property is what displays the text, right? That's what text is displayed in the label. And we're assigning each one of these elements to one of those labels. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Okay, so I have my 5 labels, and I'll just click on the button to execute the code. And you can see honey bun, shampoo, each one of these got assigned to the labels, right? So it's label 1, label 2. So each one of the elements in my array got assigned to the labels, right? Okay, just to sort of bring this home, let's set a breaking point right here to the left over here, or press F9 and play. And let's see what happens in the locals window. So I'm going to click the button to execute the code. And let's go ahead and step through. And we can see that the array has already been populated, right, with the collection initializer. It's already populated the array. So we have the 5 values in the array. And let's keep standing the square brackets and the index numbers over here. And they're all of type string. These are the actual values that are in these are the smaller box. This is our big box, right? And these are the smaller boxes, right? So let's keep stepping through. And okay, so now to access the labels, we need this, right? This means this form. It's just this object, basically. This thing, this thing that we're working on, whatever it is that we're on, right? This. So this is click on the plus sign, and you can see the labels here, right? Label 1, and then to access its properties, actually you can see the text property right here, and the honey bun. So these are the text properties for each one of those labels, right? Okay, this is we have something new here, right? This is it's called random. This is a type in the .NET framework. The .NET class library is called random. We're going to talk about the .NET class library in another video, so if you have no idea what that means, don't worry about it, that's fine. We'll get to it. But this is a type, and it's a complex type, or a custom type. Note the teal color, right, as opposed to the blue color. Both of these are types. Int is a data type, random is a data type, but random is a complex data type, right? Int is a very basic, primitive data type, built-in data type, and it's what the blue indicates that it's built in, right, to the C# language itself. And the random means that it's a custom complex type. So what the random does, you can take a wild guess at what the random does. It gets a random integer, right? It gets a random, in this case it's an integer, a random integer. And the new says create me an instance of this random, this thing called random, create me an instance of it, right? So now that we have an instance of this, we're going to drop it in this box. We drop it in this box called randomizer that can only take a random data type, right? So I know this is new, so if it doesn't it's not crystal clear, maybe clear as mud right now, but that's okay. We're gonna see a lot of this, and we're gonna come back to it. I'm gonna break it down later. So right now, just know that random is something, a type, a data type that's in the .NET framework, if you will, and it gets a random integer. Just gets a random integer, and the method that we use is next, right? Next gets this random, and these are the members of the random type. And next is the method that we use, and that just gets a random integer. And you have to give it a range, right? So this case is 1 to 100. So it goes up to, but not including 100. So basically 1 through 99. This gets a random number from 1 through 99. and the 5 just says start at 0. So this gets a random number from 0 to 4, 0 through 4. This is going to go up to but not including the 5, right? So this says get a random integer from 1 through 99. This says get a random integer from 0 through 4, right? So if you don't put a number right here, it just defaults to 0, and that's what's happened here, which is just defaults to 0. So let's go ahead and let's run this in the debugger, set a breaking point. And hit the wrong button. Let's try that again. Okay, let's hit the green button this time. Alright, so we hit the button so the code will execute. And let's go ahead and step here. So see, I had this instance of the type system.random, right? That's the type. And let's go ahead and step over. Okay, so 66. It got what that method. Remember, method just does something, right? And it got a random number from the range that I told. The range I gave it was 1 through 99, right? It goes up to but not including that 100, right? So the value it gave me was 66, just a random value within that range. And the same thing here was 1 through 4, and it gave me the value 4. So it's just getting a random value, right? That's all it's doing, and we're assigning it to these variables. Okay, so this next line, it's a little tricky. So what we're doing here, we're getting the length of the array. We're getting the length of the array. And this is something we do a lot because we don't always know how many items are in an array. Not necessarily. So here we give it we say you figure it out. We're calling this property called length, which tells us the length of the array, how many elements are in the array. In this case, it's 5. So we could actually, in this case, just put 5 here. I can just put the integer 5, and that would be the same thing, right? That would be the same thing. Because here we happen to know how many elements are in this collection. But what if you don't know? In this case, you just use the length property, right? The length property. And what was that store? And just hit dot, and this gives you the members of that array. And we're looking for length. Or you can just type in LE and length, and you see it highlighted. You just hit enter or click on it. So this gives you the length of this array. Just gives you the length of this array. So it's basically this is just like this in this case. So whatever this number happens to be, that's it's going to pass it to this method, which gets a random number, right? Once it gets that random number, it assigns it to this variable. So let's look at this in the debugger. Okay, let's go ahead and execute that code. Alright, so it gave me the number 2, right? And let's look at, what is this, 5, right? So this is just like putting 5, right? It's just a more dynamic way. Because we don't always know the length of the array or the collection. So we want to access this property. We want to get it from this property, right? And the property, in this case, is 5, holds an integer of 5, right? So this gives us a random number from 0 through 4, right? Just like with here. So we get a random number from 0 through 4. And in this case, it gives us the number 2, right? Just a random number. Okay, so this next line is, I'm going to put this random number, whatever it happens to be, it's going to be a random number from 0 through 4, right? 0 through 4. And the length is 5 in this case. But the index numbers go from 0 through 4. So we don't want to use 5. We want the random number to be from 0 through 4. So when we put 5 in here, just like here, it goes up to but not including that number. So in this case, it's 0 through 4. It's going to get that's the range, 0 through 4, right? And that's what we want. We don't because 5 is not an index number in this array. There's only 5 elements, and again, this can be a little confusing. There are 5 elements, but the index numbers go from 0 through 4. So if you try to access the element at the 5th index position, it doesn't exist. So it's going to throw an exception, right? So we're given it, in this case, it happens, we know that it's 5, so the range is 0 through 4, right? And those are our index numbers, 0 through 4. So it's going to put this index number, see the square brackets, this is indexing, right? We're given it an index number for our array. So it's going to return, it's going to give us whatever item happens to be in that particular index position. And we don't know what index is going to be. It's a random, we're getting it randomly in this case. So I've got a breaking point here. I'm using this message box again. And let's go ahead and run this. Okay, we execute the code, and now we can see we got a random value, right? The index number is 2, right? So this is just like putting 2 here. It's the same thing, exact same thing, right? So we're just using a variable in this case. The variable holds that 2. So it says get the item in the index 2 position, right? So here's our store array, here's our big box, here's our smaller boxes, right? So this is 2, so it's going to get the item in the index position 2, which in this case is sausage, right? And it's making me hungry. So this is the index 2. The item in that index position, in that slot, is this string sausage, right? And that's what it's going to assign. It's going to get this value. This is going to get, take out whatever's in that box, right? And it's going to assign it to this variable, right? And then we're going to write this, whatever's in that box, we're going to write that to this dialog box. So let's keep stepping, and we should get a message box, and there we go. So sausage. Okay, so let's look at one more example. This is basically the same thing. We're just condensing it to one line. So we've got this randomizer, right? That's the variable that holds this instance, this thing called random, right? We've got a thing. And if that's clear as mud, we're going to talk more about that later. So this randomizer is this variable, right, that holds one of these. And what that does, it gets a random integer, right? The method, we're calling this method next, which just gets a random integer within whatever range you give it, right? And then we get the length of the array. The length of the array, whatever that happens to be. In this case, it's 5. So in this case, this is just going to be 5, right? So this is like putting 5 here. Same thing in this case. But we don't always know what it's going to be, so we want to use the property and let it tell us what the length of the array is. So this is the same thing we just saw. It's just condensing it to one line. Note the square brackets for the index numbers, right? And let's say, for example, that all this returns the number 2, right? The integer 2. Then ultimately what happens is you get a 2 in the square brackets, right? Control Z to undo. So let's set a breaking point here and go ahead and run it. And this would be the last example. Alright, let's go ahead and execute that. And the length is still 5, right? So the next method gets a random number from 0 through 4, right? So that's our range. And the value, it gets the chips, right? Where the store array, and it's getting this. So the number that it gave us was 4, right? So yeah, it's basically like putting 4. Yeah, same thing, right? So it returned this method, got a random number from 0 through 4, and in this case it got 4, So basically it's just like putting 4 in these square brackets, right? So 4 is the index number, right? And that gets the string chips, right? So, and then that gets assigned to this variable, and this prints it to is the message box, and there you go, chips. Okay, so I know arrays and the index numbers, all that could be a little confusing at first. Is probably just going to take some time just playing around with it. I recommend typing this code in, and I can't stress that enough. Typing the code in, playing around with it, change the values, create your own arrays, and just play around with it. Watch it in the debugger, watch the values in the debugger, assign values to labels in your forms, and just play around with it, have some fun with it. The more you play around with it, the more it's going to sink in. So just have some fun with it. Kudos for hanging in there. I know this is a long video, and I'll see you in the next one.